says to them, because they have taken, and I like this, my Lord. Now, she is still submissive to what Yeshua taught. She still has adoration. The death of Messiah did not destroy her faith, but it was an incomplete faith. She did not grasp what he came to do. Part of that was to lay down his life. Remember what the scripture says. It was necessary for him to die. Why? There's no redemption without death. One has to shed blood for the redemption to come. And the kingdom is an outcome of the redemptive work of God. This passage is all about kingdom truth, but she doesn't get it. She's still focusing upon the dead body. So she speaks to them and she says, where they've taken his body, I do not know. And these things, after she said them, look now at verse 14, she turned and from behind. Now, that expression is very odd. She turns and from behind. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you're a good student of the Scripture, you know what's going to come into your mind? Genesis chapter 22. Now, Abraham, remember this passage of Scripture, the offering up of Yitzchak, Isaac. When Abraham is told, go to Mount Moriah. Now, what is that term, Moriah? In the Scripture, Moriah, which means Jehovah is my teacher. This place was a place of revelation for Abraham because he went there to sacrifice his son. And what happens? The angel tells him not to do something. He's confused. And then we find something. He prays, he lifts up his eyes, an idiom for prayer, and he sees behind him God's provision. So this phrase, it should call our attention back to Genesis chapter 22 and God's provision. It's a hint in the Scripture to say Messiah, him being put to death, that is God's provision for us. And we need to come to that realization. So she turns, middle of verse 14, and from behind her she sees Yeshua standing, but she does not know that it is Yeshua. Now, there's a very important play on words in the Greek text. Remember that she tells the angels, she says, where they have taken him, I do not know. Now, that phrase, I do not know, is in the normal construction. But when she sees Yeshua, now remember, she loves Yeshua. She is extremely committed to him. Out of all the people that came to the tomb that first Sunday morning, that first Resurrection Sunday, Resurrection Day, we find that Mary Magdalene, she was the first. She got there because she deeply loved him. But here's the problem. Now he is standing before her, and she did not, what does Scripture say? And she did not know that it is Yeshua. And that word for know is in a different construction. It's that pluperfect. What did we learn about it last week? It shows something which is far away. She was far away from understanding the resurrected Yeshua. And what is that to speak of? She didn't understand his kingship, the nature of that kingdom, that it's a kingdom of redemption. It's a kingdom that, and redemption, what should come into our mind when we hear that? A victory over death, overcoming death. And death is synonymous with sin. He had to have victory over sin, and she didn't see him in that way. And here's the problem. Today, so many believers, we all struggle with this now and then, but so many believers don't know the victory of Messiah. They don't understand the significance of his resurrection. And what is that? He came to give us victory over sin. And it's that victory over sin that is a catalyst. It's the source of true joy. And when we experience victory over sin, when we do not succumb to temptation, when we do not go the wrong way, but we go God's way, let me say that a different way. when we don't go our way, but we go Messiah's way, we're going to be a recipient of great revelation. Every time we say no to sin and yes to God, we are going to move up spiritually. And this going up is going to give us a different perspective. What are we talking about? Well, we mention here that Mary Magdalene, when she came to the tomb, she didn't have a kingdom perspective. She could not discern a resurrected Messiah. And that's the problem with Judaism today. You see, Judaism, they believe in a Messiah, but they do not believe that Messiah dies. In fact, Rambam is one of the most influential rabbis ever in Judaism. He lived approximately 1,000 years ago. I'm talking about Rabbi Moshe Maimonides, nicknamed the Rambam. And so much of Judaism is based upon his teaching. And what he says in what his writing called Mishneh Torah, he writes that if someone comes and does all these things that would lead us to believe that he is a candidate for Messiah, but if he dies, we know he's not. See, Judaism cannot grasp a dead Messiah. Well, he's not dead, he dies, but he rises from the dead. And Mary Magdalene can't get that into her mind. And neither do most people. Death seems as defeat. No, oftentimes, death is simply the means to victory. So she does not know that it is Yeshua standing there. Look now to verse 15. And Yeshua says to her, "Woman, why do you cry?" Now this is the second time the angel said it, and now Yeshua says this. Why do you cry? Whom do you seek? Why did you come here? And the answer is, obviously, she was seeking Yeshua. But here's the problem. She was seeking a dead Messiah, not a living one. And when we think Yeshua is dead, that he was just some great teacher, perhaps he did miracles, perhaps his teaching has changed the world, perhaps his teachings on morality and ethics are amazing and we should adopt them, but if we don't believe he is risen from the dead, what does Paul say? That all that faith is in vain. We must believe in a resurrected Messiah. So he says, why are you crying? And the answer is this. She's seeking the wrong thing. She's seeking a dead Yeshua rather than one who has conquered death. Now, she spoke, and she, look at the middle of verse 15, she, supposing that he is the gardener, says to him, Sir, if you have carried him, meaning if you carried him away, removed him, tell me where you have set him, that I might go and take him. She's still focusing upon Messiah dead rather than alive. Now, this is the third day. The third day has two meanings under Hebrew numerology. What is that? Well, the first one is 3, has to do with revealing something. We're going to see that clearly when we get into the next chapter, chapter 21. So 3 is about revealing, but also the number 3 has to do with victory. Good things happen on the third day. We see in the scripture the 3 is oftentimes related to a deliverance, a victory, or salvation. So we read in this passage of scripture, she says, if you've carried him away to someplace, tell me that I might go and take him. Verse 16. And Yeshua says to her, Mary. And she turns and says to him, Rabboni. Now, that is Aramaic. It means, as the scripture says, if we keep reading, teacher. Now, why is that being emphasized? Because Yeshua is teaching here. He's teaching her about the resurrection. He's teaching her that he is indeed the one who brings victory into our life, that brings about a transformation, that we don't have to live under the consequences of sin, but we can experience the blessings of the kingdom now that prepares us and changes us in order to be a vessel of power for the living God. And therefore she says to him, Rabboni.